Good morning, students. This is Mr. Bowen. This is our test video lecture to make sure that everything runs in case we do happen to get closed down by swine flu. It's very annoying seeing myself, but I guess you have to put up with it all the time, so this is just the way it's going to have to be if we do have to close. I'm reporting to you from the College Counseling Office in case you didn't recognize the background. Hopefully you have just enjoyed a discussion about the Gould study called A Nation of Morons from 1982. This is a real key study because it's going to give you a variety of different options to use. It can be used obviously for a biological component, and when people are trying to argue that there's a biological component to intelligence. It also can be used for cross-cultural issues because there, as you probably gathered from our discussion, there are some cultural issues that are involved with the test itself. Additionally, it can be a good study you can use when you're talking about cognitive and intelligence tests and things like that, since this was the first major attempt to quantify human intelligence. It also, as far as I know, it must be the largest quote-unquote psychological study that exists, because as we talked about in class, there were 1 3/4 million people that took part in it. So it has a lot of value on a lot of different levels. So that's going to be one of the key studies that's important for you to be aware of and to know the details about, because like I said, you can use it in a whole variety of different settings based on what the question is. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the light, melatonin, and sleep-wake cycle, which is on the website. I don't think we've discussed this one yet, and I'm not going to talk about it in depth, but I wanted to say a few words about this particular piece of research. This research is not it's not a research study that you would quote like Rain or Gazzaniga or one of those. It is a review of what really is common knowledge or commonly accepted research. There's no controversy about the relationship between the retina, the pineal gland, and melatonin and the sleep-wake cycle that we're about to talk about here. So this is, while the study is by Gregory Brown at Clark Institute of Psychiatry, you probably would not need to reference this particular piece of research, because like I said, it's not like a Gazzaniga, it's not like a Sperry, it's not like a Rain. This is just simply reporting on what is widely accepted within the profession already. Having said that, the basic mechanism of the sleep-wake cycle is simply that, it makes a lot of sense, but it simply is that when your body is in a state where there is more darkness than light, so in nighttime usually, when the darkness starts to occur, your retina senses that, obviously. Even if your eyes are closed, they can tell whether, your eyes have the light sensors and can tell whether it is receiving light or not. At that point, sorry, there was a brief blip on the computer. I thought it wasn't working. At that point, the signal goes from the retina, goes to the pineal gland, and says, okay, pineal gland, light has stopped flowing. It is now time to sleep. So pineal gland then releases melatonin. Melatonin then produces sleep in a human being. The melatonin continues to be produced throughout the night, which keeps you sleeping, and as light occurs, as we get closer to dawn or whatever the source of the light, as light occurs, then your the melatonin level gradually decreases, which then leads you back to a state of consciousness. So it's, like I said, this is not a controversial thing. It's not something that you would need to look at different studies for. This is like, it would be like if you were reporting on photosynthesis, okay? Nobody is going to doubt that photosynthesis occurs. This is the same type of thing, this type of research. But what's important to know about it is that means there are a whole, besides what we've looked at in the REM sleep with the Dement-Kleitman study, there are a lot of areas or a lot of places where interference can occur in the sleep-wake cycle. If the retina does not communicate the correct information to the pineal gland, if the pineal gland doesn't send the right signal to the melatonin, if there's not enough melatonin being produced in spite of the message to produce it, if it doesn't stop, if it doesn't start, you can see where there are a lot of areas where a problem can crop in with the sleep-wake cycle. So what I'd like you to do is to make sure to go through and read this study fully. Like I said, I've given you the overview, the summary of it, but what you need to do is to read through here, and again, this is going to be for your background so that you'd be able to quote it, quote the facts in it, but you probably would not need to actually cite the study. Okay? If you have any questions, what you're going to have to do, since we're doing this remotely, is you'll need to email those questions to me. In the next session of whenever this is, what I would hope to do is to address the questions if they apply to everyone. If it's a specific question that you have that I think maybe doesn't apply to the rest of the class, probably just email you back, but otherwise, for the next time we have a talk here online, I would try and answer those questions for you. I also want to encourage you to review the study I'd given you earlier, The Forgotten Brain. Hey, this is kind of cool. The Forgotten Brain about, oops, there's the title down there, from Jose Delgado. Remember, Delgado was, if you don't remember, this picture should help you. Remember we talked about him? Okay, so this is an article about work, not just that one particular study with the bull, but his research throughout his career and things like that, kind of a retrospective on it. Again, this is more informational. This isn't something you would cite as research, but it's going to give you some information. It might even refer you to some sources you weren't aware of. So definitely read through this, know this fully, because Delgado is a key player in the biological perspective. Okay, remember this article also? I'm not good at this reverse angle thing. It's going the wrong way and stuff, so anyway. Okay, remember this one? This article is by Gazzaniga, which you should remember Gazzaniga. So obviously very important to read through this, be familiar with what he's saying. It's not a journal article, it's just simply a magazine article, but it reflects his views and that type of thing. So you wouldn't quote it to the extent of a basic piece of research, but you certainly could include it as, for example, if there's a point in here you wanted to bring out, as Gazzaniga said in an article in Scientific American Mind in June, July of 2008, etc., etc., etc. You could quote it from there, but you wouldn't base an entire like 20-mark question on something you find in here. Okay, so that's the next thing. I thought maybe the main topic of what I should kind of review at this point is research methodologies within the biological perspective. You've been seeing research methodologies throughout all the different perspectives that you have looked at, and with this one there are some particular ones that are referred to in the IB syllabus, so I thought it would be a good idea to kind of revise those, to think about and consider which ones are specific to the biological perspective. The most important, I don't want to say the most important, the most unique type of methodology is the experiment. Why do you think it's the most unique? Think about that for a minute. What do you do with an experiment? What is the purpose of an experiment that you can't do with any other research study? Okay, John, give me your answer. Just kidding. I know this isn't interactive. What it is, now that you had a chance to think about it, an experiment attempts to establish a cause and effect relationship. There's no other research methodology that can do it. There are things that can suggest it. We'll talk about correlational studies in a moment, but the thing is, the only one that attempts to establish cause and effect is an experiment. And that's because we control outside variables, we control the setting we're doing it in, so that hopefully, the theory behind experiments is you remove anything that could interfere with this cause and effect relationship,